Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Martini. My name is Gus, and I'm Mary Rental's Director of Business Development for North America. And I've been with the Airy family now for over 17 years and honored to be your host today. As a friendly reminder, please send us your questions via the Q&A tab here on Zoom, and we'll get to as many of those as possible during the course of the show. We are very fortunate to have with us today the truly awesome Tari Siegel. Tari was originally from Chicago, where she was immersed in the local jazz scene from a young age. She graduated from Columbia College with a degree in cinematography and relocated to Los Angeles, where she interned for Phedon Papamichael on the 2004 feature film Sideways. And Tari continued working with Phedon as a camera operator on Nebraska and shot his directorial feature, Los Angeles. She continued as a director of photography on several shorts, music videos, independent features, and most recently, television procedural dramas. These projects include Law and Order, The Menendez Murders, Chicago Justice, American Crime, FBI, and FBI Most Wanted Pilot. Welcome, Tari, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, where are you now? You're back home in Chicago for a little bit?
Yes, I'm visiting family. Some of you might know from my Instagram post that my grandfather just passed away, and he ran the oldest jazz club in Chicago. So kind of here with family, and it's been really great. You know, you have to have a reason to cross, borders here with the quarantine and stuff to see family. So it's good to be back home and to also be in a really great city with really great weather for a change.
I love Chicago during the summer.
It's nice. Great.
So give us kind of your backstory, your origin story. What was it that really inspired you to go into the world of filmmaking and visual storytelling?
Well, a lot of things I look back on, and it's almost just like fate kind of played its hand into how I got into things, because originally I wanted to join the military and go into espionage. And so that was a big thing in high school. And, my parents and my grandparents weren't really supportive. They're like, why do you want to go in the military and stuff like that? And on a whim, I took a film class at Columbia over the summer. And I always had sort of a film passion, especially for still photography, but I never thought you could make a living out of it. And I took this class and I was like, I'm going to do it. And I changed everything. I mean, I was writing letters to Congress for letters to get in the academy. And I was like, nope, I'm going to film school. So everyone was very happy about that. And I went to Columbia, and I had, just some amazing professors. I'd have to say Columbia College is one of the best schools for undergraduate to study cinematography. You just get really hands-on approach. And I fell in love with French New Wave there.
What was the film that really did it for you, that stood out as like the first one that triggered all of that for you?
I'd say it was Breathless. I had a professor there who just retired, Robert Bucart, and he's this Czech filmmaker, and he would always show us these indie films, and he showed us Breathless and a lot of Godard, Truffaut. And anytime we tried to shoot something that looked good, we're in a cinematography class, he would just say, oh, that's bullshit. This Hollywood bullshit. You have where's the story? Where's the soul? You have to be an auteur. And anyway, all of that pounding down, that was French New Wave and an introduction to it, and then an appreciation for it. And then I was like, that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah.
My friends and I were like, we don't care if we have an apartment where we have just beer bottles on the floor. We used to smoke a lot back then, and we're just candles in the wine bottles and books everywhere, and we're just going to make cinema. That was the thing. So Godard was everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember falling asleep during last year at Marienbad and then waking up in the middle of it. And, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I woke up in the middle of it and I was like, what am I watching? This is insane. And so then I was so embarrassed. I went back to my teacher and said, I really want to see that again. How can I see that again? and
Hmm.
she was great. She gave me a copy of it and I watched it again. I was just like, that is mind blowing. That is so cool. And that one is the one that sticks for me. It's like,
It blew my mind. Breathless did. And, this is the ultimate indie film. Like, not that particular film, but the genre of French New Wave. If you need a dolly shot, use a shopping cart or slide against the floor. And it's not about the lighting. It was about being present. And, you could put a camera in the corner and you watch the scene. I mean, that's what was so great about Contempt, and the camera's just back there and you're seeing them go from room to room and you're just watching it, and then it goes in a room. And there was something really like real about it. And the point of view was, I could go on, and I might go on tangents, and just stop me because I'll just continue talking about nothing.
That's great.
But yeah, that was the thing. And
how about, so you mentioned still photography. I'm interested to hear, just a couple of your favorites, ones that inspire you that you constantly are looking back on.
I would say I wasn't very involved in the still photography world as far as photographers go. As I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate them and seek them out for, researching a project or something. I research still photographers that come my way, but early on it was just experimenting.
Okay.
And I took a still photography class when I was in grade school, and I was like hooked on it. I was like, this is really cool. But I just thought, this is a hobby just for me.
Yeah. So still working in film back then and having a dark room at the school, was that because that's what I vividly remember was a dark room, and now everybody's like, what's a dark room?
I wish I had a dark room experience, but I never got that. Yeah.
It's sad that that's left us, but
but when I was in college, we only shot film. Let's see, I was there in 99 at Columbia. I mean, all we shot was film. And I remember they came out with this camera, the F900, I think it was at the time. And we're all like, this is not the future. We have to shoot film. And all they did was show it to us. We didn't really get to use it. And that's how new it was. And now I think when people go to school, I think you're using Sonys and Alexas and all kinds of digital cameras. But yeah, it was all film and splicing and cutting. Yeah, it was a crazy time. It's like growing up in this analog world and like becoming an adult through this digital world.
Yep. So it's interesting, and I'm hoping, we're doing everything we can, and I know there's a lot of artists out there to try to keep film going, and it's exciting to see, both mediums play, and now we've got projects we've been doing that have shot on both, that use both technologies, and I think it's really interesting to do that.
Yeah, so. And I love that it's just another medium. I was actually reading a thing from Steve Yedlin, and he was doing a comparison test, and that guy knows how to manipulate every one and zero of your image, and you couldn't tell what was film. And then at the same time, it's like, well, what do you prefer using too? There's that approach. Like sometimes you just want to use film because of its organic process. When you're shooting digitally, you tend to keep that camera rolling a lot more. Roll the cameras, and then the slate comes in all slow and like clapping everything. And should we cut? Should we cut? Yeah. But when you're using film, it's just like every foot, counts. So everyone's more on it. So there is a different energy about it on set. So there is a whole approach you could take towards it. So your reasoning for using film could be a number of things.
Yeah. Indeed.
Not just the image quality, sometimes it's just the approach.
Right. The atmosphere it creates. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I'm drinking, by the way.
That's fantastic.
So you know.
It is Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Mentors. So I'd love to hear about you. You spoke about some of your mentors in college.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I went to LA, I went with some friends. You're starting from scratch. I think I went in 2003. So immediately after I left Columbia, because Kodak's office closed in Chicago. We were losing a lot of business to Canada at the time. big fat Greek wedding and everything. And everyone's like, if you want to make it, you got to go out west. And I went out west, didn't know what to do. And Robert called me up and said, oh, my friend Phedon is shooting a movie, and do you want to intern? And I'm like, sure, of course, I'd love to. And it turned out to be Sideways with Alexander Payne. And, you know, I sort of knew a little bit about Phedon, but I think the reason we connected so well is because he's all about the French New Wave. And so that's just what we talked about. And he's also from the Cassavetes family. You know, it's just classic American indie filmmaking. So to be around that I was always in awe. And I did the film and I thought, no one's going to watch this movie where, you know, it's Alexander Payne. He's fantastic, but it's like in wine country. We're shooting French hours. We're drinking all the time as a crew. Everyone's like, Tari, you're so lucky. You'll never be on another film set that's like this. And we're getting free bottles of wine all the time. And the cast was fantastic. We'd have lunch on like picnic benches, and you're sitting with Paul Giamatti, you know, your PA, you're sitting with Paul, and you're just eating. Like, it was just a family, you know, and that experience is cool. And I'm like, yeah, no one's going to see this movie. And then everyone was like, oh my God, Sideways. It's like it won this screenwriting award and stuff. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And it was a really great experience to see how good it can be. Because I remember asking Phedon, oh, why do you choose your projects? Is it because, you know, the script, or you think it has potential? You know, is it the stars? He goes, no, it's the people I get to work with, like the directors and producers. And he definitely picks his projects like that. So that stuck with me, about family, you know, and enjoying the actual process, because you work, and then, you know, months later, something is on at the theaters and it's like, oh, you're way past that now. So the experience of it, oh, that's why we became filmmakers, you know, and that's the cool part. And when I was interning, he carried one of those Polaroid cameras where you would shoot black and white Polaroids on a medium format camera. And so my job was to take those, and I had a light meter, and he would give me assignments like take all the measurements and on the face, and I would draw these diagrams, and I had this big book. And at the end, he let me keep it. And I learned that that's what he does for his interns. And it's like, that's a brilliant thing to do. And it's too bad that people don't do that anymore. It's really hard to actually get an internship on a major film.
Yeah. Wow. That's really nice.
Yeah, it was really cool because, you know, years later, you know, I happened to be in Nebraska, like I told you before. And he's like, I'm doing this from Nebraska with Alexander. Why don't you come and operate while you're here? And I was like, sure. And I jumped on, and it was everyone from Sideways. So, you know, the sound guy was the same, gaffer and stuff. So that, excuse me, that was a lot of fun because it was like a full circle thing. And they're all like, Tari, you've grown up. And I was like, yeah, I'm all union now, you know, I'm like shit and stuff. And they're like, oh, I'm so cool. It was like an incredible moment though. And he's working with the same people again. And it's just goes to show you, you know, yeah. Family is a important thing.
That's so cool. And then he was directing a film, and he called you up to shoot it. Is that?
Yeah. So, you know, I interned with him, and then after that, you know, you're basically on your own, and I would probably get in touch with him if I needed advice. But, you know, I just started shooting anything and everything I could. Music videos, commercials. I shot a lot of reality TV, which I think is such a great way for operators to really learn the craft. Because people sometimes like to look down on reality or whatever, but I mean, it's incredible when you're working on set and it's like cut and someone takes the camera off your shoulder. But in reality TV, it's like, how long does this tape go? 60 minutes? You got this 25, 35 pound camera for 60 minutes until this scene goes, and you're keeping an eye on the other operator, and you have to know your line. And it's not like you're doing, you know, a director's telling you shot for shot what to do. When you watch those reality series and people and the eye line's looking right, it's because your operators, you know, if you see your buddies moving over there, oh, you're moving too, to make sure you maintain that eye line.
Wow.
You know, so it's a great learning tool. And, you know, that was a big part of what I was doing. and then we met up again after I shot an indie feature for a friend that he recommended me to, and we did this like, you know, new wavy approach to filmmaking, and he just loved it, and he's like, okay, you're gonna shoot my feature and everything. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, you can imagine, you know, first of all, shooting for another DP is a very challenging thing. Okay, I can imagine what it must be like for other people too, having to shoot for DPs. And that wasn't the first, only time too. I've since then shot for other DPs, and I tell you, it's so hard for them to not want to grab the camera. At some point, you're just like, just take it, you know, you do it, you know, because that's how we communicate. And I imagine if I was directing, I'd be the same way. I'd be like, you know, just do it like this, you know, and just show them how I want it to be done. So there was a lot of that, but I got to see his approach too. So it was a great learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask you. I can't imagine what it's like shooting for someone, you know, a seasoned cinematographer like that. It's like, wow.
Well, it was so funny because I'll do like a soft light, you know, and I'm bouncing it in a 4x8 card or 4x4 card. And he goes, why are you doing that? I go, well, because we don't want to build a frame. He goes, well, just get the 4x8s and you put the two 4x8 foam cards together and you have an 8x8 and you just bounce it. And I'm like, yeah, you could do that too. That's a great idea, you know, and you learn little tricks, you know. I think when you're shooting on set, you know, you have the big, like when I think of my work now, you have all the big toys, you know, you got your 12Ks, 18Ks, you got your giant lighting setups and your fly swatters and stuff, but it's all the smaller things that you tend to use a lot, like your little tricks, your little, the DMG Lumiere light that you know, the things that you want to grab and to do the eye lane, to just shape something a little bit, like, you know, those are the things, your go-tos. You know, everyone has all of the other, you know, your truck full of stuff, but then you tend to use the little things a lot.
Yeah. I was going to can you tell us about your process when you're working and prepping and testing, and do you take the same approach for every project, or do you kind of cater it to the individual?
I cater it. Yeah. I mean, features tend to be similar to me. You know, you do a lot of research, and I like to watch a lot of movies with the directors, and you want to find a place where you're completing each other's sentences. You know, so I spend a lot of time trying to create that relationship, and, you know, you'll do whatever it takes to plan and stuff like that. FBI was a very different, you know, medium. I've never experienced anything like shooting a procedural TV show, and I don't think anything else comes close to it. I think you'll never be fully prepared for it unless you do it. And I can go into it.
Oh yeah, we will.
Yeah, but it's very difficult to prepare a show like that unless you're continuing seasons and stuff like that. I mean, you have to approach and think about it in such a different way. You have so many people to please, more than any show I've ever been on, you know. And I you know, I'll refer to Phedon a lot because we still talk sometimes, and he's like, I was telling him a little bit about my week in the middle of like season 1, and he goes, why do you work so hard? I'm like, I wish I could work less. Thank you.
What I thought was really interesting was you shoot every episode of FBI, right? That's what you were doing.
Yeah.
You didn't have a tandem DP, which is normally what we see.
No, it's well, yeah, we could just jump into FBI.
I say we go for it. Yeah, because
okay, let's do it.
I have 1,000 questions regarding that, but I mean.
Okay, good. Well, I'll give you a quick little history. I mean, when I listen to DP's talk, I love to hear the path and behind the scenes stuff. So I just want to give a little like introduction to how I even got that job. So I was introduced to Lisa Wiegand who's an amazing DP, and through my friend Jason Crothers, who's also DP. And I'd never operated for another DP. I operate for myself. I'll operate for Phedon, but I never had that experience operating for another DP. I'm like, I don't even know them. I don't know their style. Jason brought me on to Fire, which was such an amazing experience. First of all, I mean, you're just covered in fire gear, and they use real flames. The Dick Wolf world loves to do real effects. They don't like to do post effects. So those fires, those explosions, they'd blow out windows. They'd buy a whole apartment building or rent a whole apartment building and blow out all the windows and have people, like, it's incredible. You can imagine, it's a rush. You're crawling on the ground. I mean, it was so much fun. Their A operator got injured and had to take himself out of the game. They asked me to replace him. So that's how Lisa and I met. Since then, she went on and did several other shows, and she knew I was a DP first, and she brought me on to do all of her second unit and additional photography and stuff. So that's how I got introduced into the Dick Wolf world. We did Chicago Justice together and American Crime together, and which was not a Wolf show. And then we did Menendez Murders together, which was amazing. I also got to work with David Klein on that. So such a great guy. He's like the third other person I've operated for, who's amazing. So through that, FBI came up and they were looking for a DP. And these are old school guys, right? These guys have, Law and Order, SVU, and when you think of like people who've been around for decades, these are the guys. And my name came up to them because of Menendez, and they approached me for it. And I was just so thrilled because I never would have thought that they would hire, someone like me to shoot their show. And by that, I mean, a woman who's just starting out, and not someone that they know from all the years before, right? I think they said, I was very close to a lot of the producers, and we would always talk film. And one of the things I always talked about was French New Wave. And we're just like, yeah, and they wanted this FBI show to be a little bit different, a little messier and stuff like that. And I was like, I could do that. I could bring all kinds of energy to this show. So that's how I got FBI, which was an amazing opportunity.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you've shared some really cool images with us, and I love this stuff. Like you said, the behind the scenes is so fun to look at.
The e-car, that smart car. I mean, that thing can do so many amazing camera shots for you if you can think of it. The thing about FBI, which is also something cool to talk about, is shooting in New York. I have to say, it's the most difficult place to shoot in. I love New York. Let me just make this clear. I have become a New Yorker in the past 2 years because of how much I love New York. It is the hardest place to shoot. I mean, with the police and everything, because, in other cities, we pay the police to, on their overtime or retired cops. And here, we're just paying the city, and I believe it's a city, and they're paying the police on their hours. So this is just the regular job. So it's a different relationship when you want to get things locked down. You're like, oh, can I get an extra 15 minutes? It's just not as film friendly. But that's the least of my worries. You can't have drones in the 5 boroughs. When now the drone, like those helicopter shots, I'm reading in the script that they want a high angle helicopter shot. And I'm like, well, we have to get an actual helicopter to do those kinds of things, which is true. So then they would cancel that out, and they're like, well, just put something on the lift and move it. Yeah. So like this shot here, just to get to the rooftop, we had to get a lift because, it was like the elevator wasn't big enough because everything's smaller in New York. Oh, it's so many stories. It's so fun because it's challenging, but it's the hardest city to work in.
Yeah. And this seems like you're shooting some big budget, action movie every day for
Hmm. Oh yeah.
for
So,
3/4 of the year.
oh, well, that's what it is. It's, yeah, 22, 23 episodes, no rotating DP. Yeah, this is how we got the camera equipment up on the roof. Uh, yeah, that was a fun, and it's hot. The summers in New York are really hot. Um, it's a lot of work. You don't get any prep time for your episodes. You get maybe one location scout day with the director, but they'll go without you. So I'm looking on the schedule and I'm like, well, what are we shooting on the day of the tech scout? Can I leave our B operator who will bump up to DP that day? Can I leave him to be in charge of this? The other thing is I bring on this show the key grip, the gaffer, and the best boys on a tech scout, because there's some areas that you can't light up because the city's rules and this and that. You needed a whole team to attack because you only have this one chance to look at a location and figure it out. So a lot of it was, you're going to a location and the director has an idea of where they want to put things. I mean, you don't have a shot list. You're not getting oh, that shot right there is because we couldn't get a lift outside because the streets were too narrow and the city wouldn't improve it, or the weight. So the only thing we could do was, in this really expensive building, was my key grip rigged out these lights above so they can come down to these windows. And it's just like another one of those challenges of like, how do I get lights where I need them? They weren't that easy.
Wow. But I'm going to
to
be the
figure out all
dork.
these problems.
I'm going to be the dork here and say, why do you need all
Sure.
those lights? You were shooting digital. I mean,
Well, I mean, yes. On one hand, you're shooting digital. You can go without lights, but it's just obviously the consistency and the look that
yeah.
you're going for. Another thing was, we're shooting this scene that's supposed to be a day interior, and we're going to shoot it at 5 o'clock when the sun's going down. So we need to do something like that. And I get one day to plan the whole episode, and we shoot it in 8 days. And so the ideal is to have all the big toys that we need. That's basically our approach. And then you're just winging it. You don't really know what direction. A lot of times my gaffer, Kenny, and my key grip, TK, they would give me this look because on the scout, the director said, we're never looking this way, and all of a sudden the director said, oh, well, we're gonna look this way. Oh, see, this is the product of those lights coming in. You see that effect there, just to keep it the day look. And then Kenny and TK are like, he said that we weren't going to look that way. I go, I know. And I'm like going up to the director, and a lot of my job is to, be political and figure things out. And like, so we didn't plan on shooting that direction tonight. It's a whole city block. He goes, well, can we just use a sliver or whatever? And I could see the reasons why, because he blocked it a certain way, and he wants to, people like to cut corners in the scouts to act, because the producers are there too. So you're cutting corners in the scout to be efficient. But when you get on location and you're there shooting, you only have this one chance. And I was always pushing for that. And I turn to the guys and go, let's do it. And they'd be like, Kenny and TK are really funny. They're like, they're lucky we're so good, and they could just whip it up like that, and we would just, they're like, Kenny would say, I already had a light ready because I knew, that would happen. We're putting a light up in a lift on the corner and backlighting everything. It's pretty cool.
Sound like
but
an
we had
improvisational jazz band.
Oh yeah, we had really big lighting setups, just because you just don't know where the director wants to look. And you just had to be prepared for it and improvise things. I mean, 8 days and you're shooting on average 6 to 8 pages a day. And you're watching the dailies on an iPad in between setups, and you're color correcting off your iPad as well, and trying to, communicate and to the colorist some notes. And that's a whole thing too with broadcast, by the way. You have no control over the look. You know, I can control to a certain extent the streaming, which is what I aimed for, since a lot of TV is streaming now. The best possible image we would the colorist and I would work on was the streaming image, because that was the one most seen by people, because you can't control broadcast depending on the cable channel, the cable provider or the channel. Like, there's all kinds of things that happen to your image along the way, and we never did a separate color file for broadcast and streaming. It was just one.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd watch it on TV sometimes, and I'd just be like, I just can't watch this. I'd turn it off. I'd be like, this is horrible. It's like there's like it's just contrast. It's just white and black, you know.
Ah, interesting.
It's heartbreaking, but.
So did you end up changing what your approach season 2 because of what you were seeing?
Yeah, I did actually. We changed our LUT based on it. The first season I used rear filtration. I was always putting in an eighth glimmer, which I loved. But with the broadcast and the streaming, and it was a little too soft for me. I wanted to add film grain, but that's something I threw out the window because you can't control it. A lot of people say, oh, you know, why don't you just throw film grain on something? But, you know, if you're shooting an exterior and you're shooting a night interior, that film grain is going to look very different, you know, and you really have to work everything. And this is not the kind of show that's going to take the time to do that without you. And you also don't have the time to do it. For example, I'll be shooting some pickups on a Monday that's going to air on Wednesday. I mean, that time, you can see how the post people just their hands are full. They can't work on things like that. So you have to go into things knowing those limitations.
Was there a consistent rotation of the directors on the show? Were you working with the same directors on off, or was it everybody was different every time?
There were some of our regulars that would do maybe 2 or 3 episodes throughout the season, but yeah, it would rotate pretty regularly. And so you're working with a director that likes a storyboard. You're working with directors that just want to feel it while we're there. It's a whole spectrum.
But I'm sure you've got producers in the background wanting you to bring some consistency to it so that they're getting what they want from it, because it is procedural, right, in a way. So it's
procedural. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that separates us from let's say, you know, Chicago PD. I think Chicago PD has more story arcs going on. We were one and done. We never had that. So it was very important just to keep a consistency. And that was me. They looked to me to do that, which was great because they gave me a lot of respect and a lot of room to say what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that's Afton, my operator, because we have so many windows and we use real glass, and you know, you're always trying to hide reflections, and he would have this Darth Vader outfit. And I had to include a photo of that.
That's awesome.
One of the best Steadicam operators I've ever worked with. The best. I'm not going to say the best because I have a lot of Steadicam friends. One of the best. Certainly very handsome Afton, who's probably watching. Yeah, you just never knew what you were going to get with the director. And the producers just depended on you to also keep the schedule. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I had responsibilities that I've had before, but not to this extent. You know, you definitely need to make your days. Yeah. You're expected to. You're expected to really work with that budget. You know, this is a cool shot because we're using that Arimax across the way because we couldn't get a lift anywhere in New York. So there was this building 2-3 blocks away, and my gaffer and I were looking around on that rooftop during the scout, and we're just like, there, let's put it right there. And it was such an incredible beam of light that hit all the way here. And the cable run for that was hundreds of feet. I don't remember. There was so much possibility of line loss. We had to bring 2 heads up there in case one went down, and one did go down, and we had to bring the other one that happened to be there. And it's just planning for anything and everything. Yeah,
Uh,
we couldn't light up the buildings. They wouldn't let us because of the busy area of New York it was. And, we couldn't shoot after a certain hour. We couldn't put any lifts up. It was just, a difficult situation. You just got to figure out, within the 2 hours you have to figure it out. But
that is,
that was a tricky one that day.
yeah.
And that's the product of it right there. Hmm.
Do you jump in and operate quite a bit?
Not a lot. Every now and then I do. I love operating. When you're shooting a multi-camera show, for me, I like to, keep an eye on all the cameras. And sometimes we will just do one camera at a time. I prefer that a lot unless there's a lot of coverage to do. So sometimes I'll take the camera and just do it. Afton doesn't mind, which is great about him. He goes, cool, I'm gonna go get a donut and coffee. I'm like, great, I'm gonna go do this. And I love to do, because another thing with the show is I like approaching it with a very intimate style. So it was wider lenses up close and just following someone around and you didn't know which way you were gonna go. So
Did you
yeah,
find
improv.
I was going to say, so does that mean that you find yourself on Zooms most of the time, or do you have the opportunity to switch out primes?
No, in season 1, I tried to do primes a lot on location in season 1. In season 2, that was the role for me. When we went on location, it was 90% primes. I started with a cook set. I ended up with master primes. And on the stages, we used Zooms, Fujinon 1990 and the 14 to 35. The stages also, because we're in the FBI world, the approach was to be very grounded, and it was a lot of either Steadicam or it was dolly shots, studio mode work, and location was all handheld or Steadicam.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. On primes. Yeah.
Very cool. And so for you, do you see this kind of being the way things are going to go forward? Do you think what you've been doing the last 2 years is going to be feasible going forward? Because I've been hearing a real challenge, especially when it comes to location shooting.
You're talking about COVID.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm not coming back for season 3 of FBI. But I had made that decision before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oof, good luck, you guys. They're all my friends and stuff, and the producers are friends of mine, and I was just like, I don't know how you're going to do it. I know that it's difficult in New York. I know that the city isn't allowing film permits at the parks and in public places, and I don't know how you do that. You're just going to have to, I think, change the approach a little bit. The new DP is a friend of mine, Mark Ritzema, and he definitely has his hands full trying to figure out that show. I mean, the stages are very small in New York, so you're limited on people. I would love the opportunity to figure it out, and at the same time, I'm like, I'm just going to pour myself a drink, and I'd rather just be home, because it is a lot to have to adjust to, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do it. Here I am,
Well,
sitting here and just chilling out and being like, I don't know how they're going to do it. Good luck.
well, it's going to be interesting. I think, I think one of the things, and I don't know if you want to go deep down the road of talking technology or not, but I think that's one of the things that I'm hearing is being looked at now. It's like, okay, how can we achieve this without not needing these people around the camera so close to the actors? And whatever project you go on to next, I'm curious what, are you thinking about that and your approach to that and how you would achieve what you do that way?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it a lot. A part of me is just would prefer to sit in denial and say, oh, when this vaccine comes, it'll just all go back to normal and I don't even have to worry about this stuff, because I love so much the closeness of working with people. One thing I didn't really care for, which is probably a bonus now, are all the people around my monitor. I like to keep my gaffer, my key grip, or I'll go to the main village with the director. I usually keep a separate village, especially with procedural. The director and the script supervisor, they're basically knocking shit off that list, and I'm concentrating on the image with the operators and my team. And we're just, surrounded by people all the time that everyone has an opinion, and you're just like, no, that's great, thanks. This is my area, and so I think that's going to change, and people can get remote viewing and stuff like that. But at the same time, it is, to me, something I don't really care for is everyone having an opinion about the image itself, and not just, what they have to look out for. So giving that access to that image to more people is, it's a little bit worrisome to me, but it is what it is, and you'll deal with it like everything else. But because when you're shooting on film, I mean, it's like only you really know what it's going to look like, so people really don't talk about the image. Lisa would put a sticker on her monitor that said for focus only, so people don't, oh, what about the color? No, what does it say? For focus only,
Yep.
So yeah, remote viewing will be a big thing, and I think it will help to get people away from each other, but also it opens up, everyone having your image. I don't know, some people are fine with it. I don't know. It's still your work,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, exposing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been hearing even, the attempt of, having these kind of these pods or these groups on set. And it's like, you guys stick together and you stay within this and you don't interact with anyone else, and make sure that they can control. And if anything were to happen, they know that it's kind of contained within this group. And so it's been leading to, more people asking for, remote heads and being able to control cameras and motion control dolly systems and so on and so forth, where they can set up and then leave, and then basically the stage is for the actors and everybody else is away, and they're doing that. It's really interesting, and I'm just curious, from your perspective, how does that impact being able to do, to create that kind of that independent, free-flowing, moving fast environment? I'm not sure how that works with each other.
Well, okay, and we can swear on this thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like my feelings about it all, to be honest, it's just like, fuck that shit. Like, I want, I use a remote head when I want to fucking use a remote head, and when it works for the style. There's so much of what I do, especially on FBI, that is just intimate and playing off an actor, and you can't do it without being in the room. The lead actor on FBI, Missy, I could see where she's going, and I can look at her, and she knows too. You have this relationship with your cast, with the operators, and they know, and they'll say, like, Jeremy Sisto will go around saying to Afton, so you're cool if I just go anywhere around here? And he's like, yeah, I'll follow you. When you're on a remote head, you're not always going to be able to catch a lot of those nuances if you're not in the room to see, because we do so much improv. That said, if it's necessary to get it off the ground, to work through COVID, I am more than happy to say, for COVID, let's go and do this approach. If this is what gets people to work, and and I'm fine working with limitations, but when all of that's said and done, let's remember that we can go back to doing things the way we like to do.
Yeah.
I get a little scared that some people just get so used to, for example, we would shoot car stuff on location, get a tow rig or whatever, and now they're talking about, well, we'll do everything on an LED screen and stuff like that. And a lot of times I think LED screens are fantastic. It saves a lot of time, but sometimes you do want to go out on a location and not have to, think about how post is going to handle that, because we'll do some green screen stuff, but it's up to post to be able to deliver. And if they're delivering things at the last minute because of the schedule, then what's that final product going to be? It might not be as great as it could be. So, there's a lot of of me pushing for doing things, you know, the way I feel would best serve the final product. So I do get worried sometimes that
Yeah.
people will get used to doing things a certain way, but you know, worry about it when that bridge gets crossed.
Good, good. We've got some questions coming in from the
Okay.
audience, and that's, you know, the first one is about lighting, and
Okay.
how do you approach lighting when you're on such a tight schedule with multiple cameras? Is there kind of a real basic for you that you start with?
Well, it's scene dependent, and I'm planning the lighting approach during um, the blocking of the scene and what can work. So when the director's asking me, "Oh, how does this work for you?" and I go, "Well, you know, I'm always trying to get some sort of contrast onto our talent with the lighting, and so I'll just try and work that blocking into a way that I know will work with what we've set up or built and isn't going to take too much other effort or work. That said, our show, even though I like to approach it in a realistic way with the lighting, I mean, I'd love to go way darker, but the expectation from my bosses is that people still have to look good, right? So you are filling in a little bit more than you would. So you are thinking about that too. So I do try and set it up as best I can to make our lives as easy as possible in the blocking, and then finding that way we can build in um, a nice contrast level.
Hmm. Okay. And operating, there's a question about, you know, what do you look for in an operator, and, you know, the collaborative cooperation between you guys. Are you just
Oh,
screaming at them over the microphone all the time?
okay. That's funny because I'm sure some of them would say I do. Am I hard on operators? The answer is yes. Um, well, I feel bad. No, I have a lot of expectations. You have to have great instincts, and the more you're on my set, I think the more if you have great instincts, and I'm giving you a lot of great feedback, I think the more you feel you're able to take chances, and that's what I'm looking for, like those opportunities, you know, with your camera when you see something that's going to work with the story. And I love my operators to wear the contact, you know, to really be engaged in the story, and to really, once you're there behind the lens, you're really just, you're with the actor, because that's how I like to operate. And I think that's what I want from my operators, is to really tie in to things, so that even though I'm saying your job is to follow Zico around in a medium close up, that, you know, I do fixed lenses a lot, or I'll just say you're going to stand at 32. I don't zoom in the shot. So it's hard for some people to not feel so rigid, but I do look for people with great instincts who know when the time is right to move off of that or to follow something. And that's something that comes with experience, but also comes with just this thing that you either have or you don't have, you know, to dance with the camera.
Very nice. And
Yeah.
speaking of cameras, you know, how many cameras do you normally throw at a scene? Is it two, and then maybe a third and a fourth based on?
We do two cameras, sometimes one. If it's a big stunt situation, we'll throw in a third or a fourth. I've done four cameras where we just keep one on the crane, you know, and then we'll keep one on steady cam, and then I'll have two other operators. That way we can just go to whatever, you know, we want to do, handheld, or, you know, just, you're just anticipating because you don't have as much time to
Yeah.
to do a scene that normally I feel like you'd get a full day for, but you have 3 hours and you're just like, okay, well, and then you have to put in those requests. Well, I need an extra camera. Well, why do you need an extra camera? Because I don't want to come off the crane. Oh, okay, fine. Get an extra camera. And that's where you spend your money, is just anticipating those needs.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
and I mean, again, the more cameras, I would imagine, the more challenging the lighting is.
Yes, that is true. It can be, especially on day exteriors. Again, in New York, where you have these tall buildings, and the sun is moving and it's hitting, this building full of glass, and now you're getting this huge kick. I mean, that happened so many times that you could, obviously you're starting to predict it when you're scouting. Well, we're going to shoot at 11 and the sun will be behind the building. Oh yeah, but it's going to hit that building over there and key everyone. And how are we going to deal with that? And sometimes the producers would just be like, you're just going to have to deal with it, so you have to find a way to make it work for you so that you're not going home and, drinking yourself to sleep. You have to find a way to, like these things, and all your decisions and stuff, even though it's not necessarily something you'd really want to embrace in the moment, you have to find a way to make it work.
Yeah. So you actually
like that rig out the window.
Exactly.
Like, I want to be able to move the lights around, but we can't. So
yes,
I love it.
Very cool. There's someone asking about your favorite episode of FBI, if you had to name it. And for you, that was like, you know what, that all clicked, and I'm really happy with the way it looks. And
I mean, there's 40 something episodes. Funny enough, I really loved the backdoor pilot that we did for Most Wanted. But if it was FBI, I would say probably maybe the finale or the second to last one of the season that we just finished. Those last two were my favorite.
Okay.
We really pushed the limits of what we could do, which was great. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said they're standalone. So it sounds like it would be fun to be able to just go watch just various episodes. You don't really need a lot of history. You don't have to follow it.
You don't need history. Yeah. Okay. You don't. I mean, for better or for worse. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people like it. We have an insane number of viewers. It's incredible how many people are fans of the show and watch the show. And, you might not get a lot of, critic appraisal stuff, and people talking about it all the time, but your audience is like in the millions, so you're always I'm always thinking of the audience and how to make it interesting for them, because a lot of them aren't your peers, your filmmaking peers who know everything that you're doing. I think people who watch the show, they like things about it. They don't know why they like it, but they do. And I think I'm just always pushing to give them something cool like that, something that maybe they haven't seen before, with playing with the focus or with the camera angles. We do get a little bit daring for network procedural, so it's fun.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I've had a lot of people, come away from that experience just saying it's a meat grinder. I've got nothing to show for it, very negative in a way. So it's refreshing to hear your opinion about it, and the fact that, it's so energetic and so much fun.
It was fun because they gave me a lot of room to play with it. And they said, we really want to do something cool with it. And when I did the pilot for Most Wanted, one of the exciting things that I did was I shot everything with a chocolate filter. Again, color correction is a really hard thing to control, because you're going through all the producers and the network and the studio. And don't forget, we have CBS and we have NBC Universal and we have the Dick Wolf producers. And so you're answering to all of these people and what they want. And the colors and I were always just like, what can we get away with? What are we, how can we stretch this image out? So for the pilot, I said, I really want these brown tones. I knew I wasn't going to be able to sit in there with him. Having used a lot of color filters in my other work, I knew exactly what this would do, this chocolate filter. And I put it in, and everyone loved it. But here is a little piece of advice, though, because again, I did a test of it to get approval for the chocolate filter. I got 1,000,001 emails about what is a chocolate filter? Is it going to look like candy? What does that mean? And I should have just called it something else, like an A1 filter or something. So that's my little piece of advice, especially dealing with people who aren't too camera savvy. Don't call it a chocolate filter. It'll save you a lot of headache. It was a whole thing. what are they going to look like? Is everyone going to be like super dark? I don't know. It was just a whole thing. But it was great though. It ended up being great.
Yeah, that's really funny. That's a great story. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. So what's next, Tari? Where are you hoping to go next with your career? And if you
I
had
have an answer for that.
your
Honestly, I'd love to do another feature again. Get away. FBI was 9 months of my life at a time. And it was just, you can get a little bit of a burnout after those shows. I'd love to work on a really lovely feature for 30 plus days. How wonderful that would be. Or a 13 episode, series. Anything less than 22 episodes would be fantastic. Just a shorter commitment. And, a place where you're getting all of that pre-production with directors and everything that you're going to be up against and get to work on. That would be ideal for the next project.
Is there, if you had to, if you could pick and choose, is there a particular director, filmmaker that you would really say, I'd love to do their next project?
Oh, well, funny enough, I met a director on FBI, Steven Surgic. He's doing The Witcher right now, I think, and we just hit it off. Oh boy, we just had so much fun. It was like having that spirit again of indie filmmaking in this world. And I'm like, he happened to join us for a couple episodes and was so great. And he goes, "Do you ever use like fishing light?" I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, I used to use fishing, in the foreground of the lens and with the light." And we were just playing with, he's like, "Christmas lights." And I'm like, "Yes." And we were just doing so many fun things. He goes, "Oh my God, we should work on something else together." And I was like, "Call me up. I'm done after this season. Let's do something." So hopefully we're going to work on something in the near future.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yep.
He's great. He's fantastic.
We get a lot of really wonderful people in our audience that are, young filmmakers, international filmmakers, just getting started in their career. And they always ask, what advice do you have for young filmmakers as we get going? What would you throw out there to them?
Okay.
Besides, don't call it a chocolate filter. I mean, we've got that one.
To go with that, I would say, learning the politics of the set is super important. It's something that's not taught. I remember Phedon talking to me about it once. You really, I don't want to say need to know how to manipulate people, but what the hell? Yes, you need to know how to get what you want. You need to know how to weigh certain things. And you also need to know how to be wonderful and how to be a team player. I think there was a time when I could probably go on a set, or anyone could go on a set and be a total asshole, artist, DP. I'm the only one that matters and what I say counts. But, obviously times have changed. And even, for me, I try to take this idea that I had of the auteur and be much more of a team player. And you really need to learn those kinds of politics and how to work with people on a professional level when starting off. Because definitely when I was starting off on these indie films, you're fighting for every little thing and stuff, and you're not really involved as much with the producers. It's more just you and the director, right? But working with budgets and how to get more for what you need and all those kinds of things are challenges to learn or be aware of, and to listen for other people's stories and how they handled things. I have a story of someone who wanted to help with someone's face was kind of shiny, and the makeup artist and this is not my show, so the people who work with me, don't worry, it's not about you, but the face was too shiny. The makeup artist was like, "No, we don't powder them." And so after a while they were like, "Oh, hey, the GP was like to the makeup artist, here's a lovely bottle of wine. I thought you could." Like, "Oh, thank you. Oh God, look how shiny she is. Oh, I'll go fix it for you." Like there's a way to talk to people to get the things that you want, So yeah, manipulation, whatever. That's definitely some advice. And then the other piece of advice that I never had, I would say, and I wish I knew how to do better, was network. And I think that hanging around other DPs, going to all those events, talking to as many people and getting your name out there. And I know some people who are amazing at it, but it's really great to do that and it doesn't hurt, you know, but I'm not good at it. I wish I was, and I would give that as some advice to other people is, you know, try to get, you know, better and comfortable at things like that, talking to people, that sort of thing.
That's really nice. Thank you so much for that.
Of course.
And it's been an hour. It's been an amazing hour.
Oh, that's great.
So much fun. Thank you, Tari.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to spend time with you and to catch up with you.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure working with you the last 2 years, and I'm really hoping we get to work together again soon.
It's so weird to see you in this capacity when I would email you about like lenses and stuff.
Yeah, yep.
And here we are just chatting.
It's very nice.
It's fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, take care. We'll talk soon. And thank you to everybody that joined us today. Please join us again next week. We're going to sit and talk with cinematographer Neville Kidd about the Netflix series Umbrella Academy. And all of our episodes are going to be available on our website, airyrental.com, where you can check those out, and also our unique and exciting products. And you can follow us on youtube.com/airyrentalgroup. Okay. Until next time, everybody. Cheers.